Margaret had a rule she never spoke aloud, but never broke. The children eat first. Even on the nights there was barely enough. Even on the night she went to bed with nothing in her stomach but water and a quiet, private kind of fury at the world. The children ate first. That was the rule. That was the whole rule. She had made it the evening they brought her husband home in a closed casket. Thomas and Claire were 4 years old, too young to understand death, but old enough to feel the hole it leaves. And she had stood in her kitchen looking at what little food was left and made her decision. Whatever happened next, whatever the world threw at her, the children would not suffer for it. They didn't know how close it got sometimes. She made sure of that. She sold vegetables at the market from 5 in the morning. She sold fabric on weekends. She took in hair plaiting work in the evenings, bent over her customers under a yellow lamp, while her fingers ached and her eyes burned. She did not complain. Not once. Complaining belonged to people who had the time for it. The neighbors whispered anyway. That woman will break. You watch. Margaret heard them. She said nothing. She got up the next morning at 4:30 and started again. The twins grew up in the image of everything she poured into them. Thomas, Tommy, to everyone who loved him, was his father's laugh in his mother's body. Broad-shouldered, steady, the kind of presence that made a room feel safer without doing anything obvious. He was brave, but not recklessly so. He thought before he moved. He was the boy other boys followed and didn't always know why. Claire was different. She was still where Thomas was motion, deep where he was open. She read everything. She remembered everything. She sat with a problem the way a jeweler sits with a stone, patiently, from every angle, until it gave itself up. Her teachers ran out of ways to praise her. Margaret just called her my little professor and left it at that. Together, they were the only proof she needed that her life had meant something. When their results came in, both of them, distinctions across the board, Thomas ran across the schoolyard shouting for his mother like a little boy again, and Margaret stood at the gate with her hand pressed over her mouth, refusing to cry in public, shaking anyway. That night, she cooked their favorite meal, and they laughed and talked about university and the future spread out before them like something bright and possible. She let them have that night. She let them have all of it. Then, after they slept, she sat alone at the kitchen table and did the numbers. She counted what she had. She counted what was needed. She counted again, slowly, in case she had made a mistake. She hadn't made a mistake. She sat them down on a Sunday and told them the truth plainly, the way she had always done. I cannot send you both right now, but if you help me build the business, we go together. I promise you, we go together. Thomas didn't hesitate. Claire goes first. I'll stay, Mom. It's fine. Claire looked at her brother for a long moment. No, she said quietly. We go together or we wait together. That's the only way. Something passed between the three of them, an understanding that didn't need words. They would wait. They would walk. They would do it as a family. For 2 years, that was exactly what they did. Thomas handled the traders and the negotiations with a natural authority that made older men respect him without quite knowing why. Claire ran the books, tracked every penny and quietly restructured the entire business in ways that Margaret didn't fully understand but deeply appreciated. The money grew slowly, steadily, the way honest money does. They also grew in other ways, into the neighborhood, into the market community, into a wide circle of friends and acquaintances. Most were good people, hardworking, decent, the kind of people you want around you. But Margaret noticed some of the others, the ones who were too free, too easy, too generous with their attention. She gave her warnings once, the way she gave most things, clearly, without drama. She thought that was enough. She was wrong. One Tuesday morning, she looked at her daughter across the breakfast table, and everything she had built began to crack. Margaret had not asked the question out loud yet. She didn't need to. A mother's body knows before her mind will let her accept it. It was in the way Claire moved, carefully, like someone guarding something. The way she left food on her plate. The way she startled at small sounds in the night. Margaret had been watching for 2 weeks, telling herself a different story every morning. And every morning, the story felt less true. On Tuesday, she simply said, "Get dressed. We are going out." She didn't say where. Claire didn't ask. The doctor delivered his news the way doctors do. Plainly, as fact, with the professional distance of a man who has learned that detachment is a kindness in these moments. Margaret thanked him. She picked up her bag. She walked out. They did not speak on the journey home. Not a single word. The silence between them was not cold. It was heavy. The way the air gets heavy before a storm. Full of everything that is about to be said. Inside the house, Margaret set her bag down. She stood with her back to her daughter. Then she said, very quietly, "Call your brother." When Thomas came in from the back room and saw their faces, his own face changed. He sat. He waited. Margaret told him. The stillness that came over Thomas was not the stillness of calm. It was the stillness of a person holding something that might shatter if they move too quickly. He turned to his sister, and the word came out broken. Why? Carrying everything underneath it. The anger, the grief, the bewilderment of someone who thought he knew every corner of the person closest to him. Claire broke. She had been holding herself together since the clinic, and now she came apart completely. The kind of crying that doesn't care how it sounds. It was a mistake. He said he loved me. I believed him. I'm sorry. Who? Margaret's voice was flat and absolute. Who is he? Claire only cried harder. The slap came sharp and sudden. The room went silent. Thomas was across the room in 2 steps. He put his hand on his mother's arm, gently, just there, just enough. "Mom," his voice was barely above a whisper. "Let her breathe." Something in him reached her. Margaret stepped back. Her chest was heaving. Thomas sat down on the floor beside his sister, shoulder to shoulder, the way they had sat since they were children, too small to know what the world would ask of them. He waited until her breathing steadied. "Tell me," he said quietly, just to her. "From the market," Claire whispered. "The electronics store near Mom's. Danny." The name fell into the room like a stone into still water. Margaret sat down slowly. When she spoke, she was not shouting. That was the worst of it. The quietness. I sewed cloth in the rain so your shoes wouldn't have holes. I ate once a day for months so you could go to school. I have argued with God in the night over your father, and the only answer he ever gave me was the two of you. She stopped. The room waited. And this is what you bring me. They found Danny the next day. He became, in that meeting, a man none of them recognized. Small and slippery, his eyes looking for exits. The child wasn't his, he said. She had misunderstood everything he said. He kept talking, filling the silence with words that meant nothing, until Margaret's hands called at her sides and Thomas put a steady hand on her arm for the second time in 2 days. There was nothing more to be done. Some men are not worth the fury they cost. The forgiveness, when it came quietly. Thomas first. He was not made for coldness, and 3 days was the longest he could manage. He started talking to Claire again on day 4, making her laugh at small things, pretending not to notice how relieved she looked. By the end of the week, it was almost normal. Margaret came to it differently. It was a night when Claire was sick with the wretchedness of early pregnancy, and Margaret found herself in the doorway with warm water and a cloth. And she realized, standing there, that she was already on the other side of her anger. The love had never moved. It had just been standing behind the pain, waiting for her to stop blocking it. She sat on the edge of the bed and stroked her daughter's hair. "You are still mine," she said. That was all. That was the whole of it. But forgiveness, Margaret was about to learn, was only the beginning. Because the hardest part wasn't behind her yet. It was 9 months away, and it was going to change everything. The boy arrived on a Thursday, loud, furious, and magnificent. They named him Oliver. Little Ollie from the very first hour, before anyone had agreed on it. Because the moment Margaret held him, the name arrived fully formed, the way some things just do. She held him the way she had held his mother and his uncle 20 years before, in the same chair, by the same window, and something in her chest, something she hadn't noticed, was clenched, let go. She looked at his face. She looked at it for a long time. He looked like his grandfather. She hadn't expected that. She hadn't expected to feel what she felt, which was not grief exactly, but something alongside it. Something that felt dangerously like hope. Claire recovered slowly, and then all at once, the way young people do. She was a mother now. That changed her in ways nobody could have predicted. There was a new seriousness to her, but also a new softness, a tenderness she hadn't known she was capable of. She loved Oliver with a fierceness that sometimes took her own breath away. But the university forms on the shelf gathered dust. Nobody said anything about them. There was too much else to manage. The baby, the business, the daily arithmetic of keeping things together. The forms just sat there, a quiet reminder of a life that had been interrupted, waiting to see if anyone would come back for it. Thomas looked at those forms every day. He said nothing. He made a decision instead. He started studying again in the evenings, quietly, without announcement, after the baby was asleep and the house had settled. He sat at the kitchen table with his books and his notes and the particular concentration of someone who has something to prove, not to anyone else, but to himself. He applied for every scholarship he could find. He filled out form after form late into the night. And on each application, there was an essay question. And in each essay, Thomas wrote carefully, honestly, about a woman who sewed cloth in the rain so her children's shoes would have no holes. About a sister who had stumbled and a family that had chosen not to let her fall alone. About what it meant to wait when waiting was the hardest possible thing. Somewhere, a selection committee read one of those essays. They read it twice. The letter came on a Wednesday morning, plain envelope, Thomas's name on the front. He read it standing at the kitchen counter. Then he read it again. Then he stood very still for what felt like a long time, but was probably 30 seconds. He didn't shout. He didn't run. He walked to his mother's room and knocked on the door. And when she opened it, he simply held the letter out. Margaret took it, read it once, read it twice, set it down on the bed. Then she covered her face with both hands, and finally, after years of refusing, she wept. Not from sadness, from something that doesn't have a clean name. Relief and grief and pride and exhaustion and joy all coming at once, after being held back for so long. Thomas put his arms around her and held on, and she let him, and neither of them said anything because nothing needed to be said. He left on a grey morning, one bag over his shoulder, Oliver on his hip for one last minute before he handed him back to Claire. He looked at his sister for a long moment. She was trying not to cry and doing a poor job of it. Register for the next intake, he said. Keep the book.
Look after Mom. I'll handle the rest. Tommy, I will handle it, Claire. He kissed his mother on the forehead. He walked to the car. He didn't look back. Not because he didn't care, but because if he had, he wouldn't have been able to go. What none of them knew as the car pulled away that grey morning was that Tommy was leaving behind more than a family. He was leaving behind a version of himself. The man who came back would not be the same one who left, and that would save them all or cost them everything. He called every Sunday. It became the rhythm of the household. The week building quietly toward that one call, Oliver learning to say Uncle Tommy before he could say much else. Margaret sitting in her chair by the window with the phone pressed to her ear like a woman in prayer. Thomas asked about Oliver first, then Claire, then Margaret. Then, only then, would he say anything about himself. He was doing well. That was the short version. The longer version was that he had walked into that new country with nothing but a scholarship, a single bag, and the particular kind of determination that gets forged in hardship and has no softness left in it. He studied like a man who understood exactly what studying had cost. He worked part-time. He slept less than he should have. When his first real salary arrived, he sat at the desk in his small London flat for a long time. He thought about the kitchen table back home, the kerosene lamp, the hair plaiting, the cloth sold in the rain. Then he transferred money home. He did it again the next month, and the month after. Every month, without fail, without announcement, without asking for gratitude. 2 years in, he called on a Thursday instead of Sunday. Put Claire on. Margaret handed the phone over without a word. The next intake, Thomas said. Have you registered? A pause. Tommy, the fees. Have you registered, Claire? Another pause. Longer. No. Register tomorrow. I'll send the fees by Friday. Don't argue with me. She argued with him anyway, for about 4 minutes, out of pride, out of love, out of the complicated guilt of someone who feels she has already cost her family too much. Thomas listened to all of it without interrupting. Then, when she was finished, he said simply, You didn't ask for what happened to you, but you get to decide what happens next. Register tomorrow. She registered the next morning.
Claire studied the way a person studies when they know the exact price of the opportunity in their hands. She was focused in a way her old self wouldn't have recognized. Quieter, more deliberate, more certain of what she was working toward. Her lecturers noticed. Her grades reflected it.
Oliver grew. He was 3 now, round-cheeked, fast-moving, in possession of very strong opinions about everything. He had his grandfather's face and his uncle's laugh, and some quality entirely his own that none of them could name, but all of them felt. He was the kind of child a house wraps itself around. Margaret watched him run in the garden in the evenings and felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Ordinary happiness. The uncomplicated kind, the kind she had almost forgotten existed. The evening it all came together was a Saturday. The house had new paint on the walls. There was a ceiling fan in the sitting room, a small thing, a quiet luxury, the kind of improvement that means more than it should. Margaret's old mattress had finally been replaced. Small dignities, stacking up. Oliver was running in the garden, chasing something only he could see. Margaret sat on the veranda and watched him, and her phone buzzed. Thomas's face on the screen. "Mom, how are you?" "Tired and well. How are you?" "The same. How's my boy?" She laughed. "He's not your boy." "He's my boy, my nephew, my best mate, and my reason for working overtime. How is he?" "Currently chasing either a butterfly or his own shadow. I can't tell which." His laugh came down the line, big, full, his father's laugh exactly. And Margaret closed her eyes for just a second, the way she always did when she heard it. "Is Claire home? Studying? Exam Monday? Good. Tell her I'm proud of her. Tell her yourself on Sunday." "Mom." Thomas. A bit of silence. The comfortable kind. The kind that belongs to people who have come through something together and no longer need to feel every quiet moment. "Thank you," she said then, softly, "for being who you are." He didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice had changed, stripped of the lightness, down to something truer underneath. "I learnt it from you." Oliver had stopped running. He was standing in the middle of the garden now, squinting at the veranda, at his grandmother, weighing up his options with the profound seriousness of a 3-year-old making an important decision. Margaret looked at him, at his grandfather's face, his uncle's energy, the impossible ongoing fact of him, and she opened her arms. He came running, and in the end, after everything, the husband she had buried, the years she had spent, the nights she had argued with God, the anger, the grief, the forgiveness that had asked more of her than anything else, it was this that she would remember most. Not the hardship, the running, the arms that were always, always there. The end.